You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network. Welcome to episode 3 of Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, here on the All on Georgia Radio Network. We are happy that you are here with us. We have a lot on our plate this week. There's a lot that we're going to discuss. We're not going to go, really deep into the funny intros. It's episode 3. You know who we are by now. I'm here with Jessica. She's always here. I'm here with Matt. He's always here. I will say about Matt right now that Matt's kicked back in a hotel room in Chattanooga drinking beer while the rest of us are hard at work. So
no, not Chattanooga.
Kudos to you, Matt. Gatlinburg. Like the Johnny Cash song, Gatlinburg in mid-July. It feels like mid-July today, by the way.
It was 80 degrees up here.
Yeah.
Yep, it was 83 in South Georgia.
Man, I was pissed because, we're up here in mid-February, and I was hoping to, cut across the mountain and go skiing or something like that. No, we're swimming.
Outside, it's...
Yes, my kids are jumping in the outdoor pool, which is not heated. And it's like, 65 degrees right now. And they're like, it's cold, Dad. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm hanging out in the hot tub, so.
Right now?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I kicked everyone out of the room. They're down at that little indoor water park thing that's with this resort that we're at. And I'm sitting on the couch drinking beer and talking to y'all.
Well, all right. Well, Jessica told us before we started that she was having a bad day, and it looks like Americans have an average of 60 bad days a year, according to a study.
Man, that's 60 bad days a year. That's 5 days a month, right?
And the same study said that
that's every
80%.
Monday.
And a handful of Tuesdays.
Right. The study said that it's almost 80% work related.
I think that we're all pretty happy with what we're doing now, but I know that, all of us have had some crap jobs in our background. And so, yeah, it's definitely true that, work can make for some bad days. And, I'll tell you what else can make for some bad days are taxes.
Well, you're right, and I'm not going to disagree with you, but the study that we're talking about said that 1 in 4 people said that uncooperative hair puts a damper on their day, which, I totally agree with.
Oh, man, thank God I'm a guy.
Yeah, I shave my head. Number 3 on the top, number 1 on the side.
Yep, 1 on the sides and back, and then they blend it into the top.
Yep.
Really, 1 in 4.
Yeah, that's...
1 in 4.
1 in 4. But still, though, 80% saying that it's work-related. That's 48.
And then 8% said that it could be wrecked by their favorite sports team losing a game. And 34% that said they were more likely to drink alcohol after a bad day, while 50% said they were more likely to eat unhealthy foods after a tough day.
So, man, I had some fudge earlier.
So they didn't interview a lot of potheads, I'm assuming.
Well, they're not having bad days.
High five.
Right? Have you ever seen a stone guy that's like, man, today sucks?
So did you get the article up? Because it's pretty interesting. It states
I did.
Americans pay the least and the most taxes. And Georgia is number 19. And it said that we pay 9.1% of our income to state income taxes. 9.1%.
Right. And I'm looking at that, and, we are also the 11th lowest income per capita state.
Do you hear that? Do you hear that?
The 11th lowest. But remember, we are the number 1 state to do business in, according to Governor Nathan Deal.
Right. We're the 25th highest for income tax collections per capita. But I'd be interested to know how many people in Georgia, like the breakdown of population in Georgia that's actually paying taxes.
It's probably just like anywhere else. that roughly the bottom half are not paying any.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also thought it was interesting that the worst state in the nation is New York, and our percentage of our income to state taxes was 9.1%, and New York is the worst, and theirs is 12.7%. So we're really not that far off.
Yeah, did you see who number one was though?
Alaska at 6.5%.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is offset by all that money that they get for the oil. Like there's
Right.
Alaska residents get a check stroked to them every year, and I wonder if that offsets some of the taxes.
Sure.
I'm sure that it definitely does.
They have a high income per capita at 55,000. So
Yeah.
Right. Well, do you ever watch any of those shows on TV about like Life Above or Life Below Freezing or whatever? Like, have you? Oh man, well, it's crazy. All the these guys, they live out in the middle of nowhere. 4 miles from the Arctic Circle or something like that, and all they do all day is build on their house and hunt for food and things like that. But they own track hoes and airplanes and I'm like, how do they get the money to pay for all that when they clearly don't have a job? They're very interesting shows, but I mean, obviously it's TV too, so.
Yeah.
Well, and that's interesting too because Alaska is not really a state that you can compare any other to. It's very unique.
Right. Yeah. Now, some of the things that they were talking about was like their cost for foods that are grown, bananas and apples and oranges and things like that, where I don't know what we pay for bananas here, 59 cents a pound or something like that. They're paying $13 and $14.
Really?
Yeah, it was insane.
Their $55,000 doesn't go very far.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're eating fruits and vegetables, which probably explains why most of them eat, moose and caribou and bears and salmon and.
I'd never survived. That's definitely not keto either.
Yes, it is.
Not just moose. It's not just keto.
I wonder how long a moose would feed my family, because there's by law you have to take 500 pounds of meat off a moose.
Really?
What?
Yeah. Because animals like that, it's not like a deer here in the South where you ride your four-wheeler up to it, throw it on the front, strap it down, and drive it out, throw it in the back of your truck, take it to a processor. You have to quarter them up and pack it out, and many times you're miles away from a road. So yeah, there's laws that say, like with a moose in Alaska, you have to pack out at least 500 pounds of meat.
And what's the reasoning for that? I don't understand.
So you don't wanton waste laws.
Was there a
Meaning, when I say pack it out, like the law isn't requiring that you have to put it in a backpack and pack it out. The law is requiring that you have to recover that much meat. You can't leave it rotting in the forest.
Was there a problem that led to that?
Well, I mean, they're big ass animals, they're 1,500 pounds, and there are people who would, and I've seen it happen with deer here. Most hunters that I know have stumbled upon a carcass in the woods that had just the prime cuts of meat cut out of it, and the rest left.
Gotcha. I didn't know we had to regulate that, but I mean, there's leave no stone unturned.
Right. Yeah. In conversations that I have with people about hunting and whatnot, I think most are very surprised to find out exactly how regulated it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and speaking of regulation in animals, it's not really a hunting thing so much, but I think the best story on All on Georgia today is I'm just going to give you the headline. Sheriff, man helped give goat whiskey and cocaine. This is a story out of Gwinnett County. He's now been, of course, charged with cruelty to animals. But, yeah, it's out there. Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office said in a statement, 28-year-old Sergio Palomares Guzman was arrested February 15th in connection with a videotaped incident believed to have occurred in early January. The sheriff's office says Guzman lived on a ranch where he worked as a horse trainer. The release says video showed him. Okay,
A ranch in Briant County?
Yes, that's that. That was also one of my thoughts. But yeah, apparently apparently the video shows him holding the goat's horns and forcing its mouth open, while another man gives it substances. I'm not sure why you would want to give a goat whiskey and cocaine.
You clearly have too much money. if you giving coke to a goat.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I think that we've all either seen at at parties in college or at or on YouTube.
Like
No. I think that we've all seen at parties in college, or if nothing else, on YouTube videos. The people blowing the pot smoke in the cat's or the dog's face. But I mean, this is on a completely different level here. I mean, because at least if you're doing that, then you're not really just. I mean, you're just giving cocaine to a goat. I'm at a loss here. Completely at a loss.
Like I said, I'm really bothered by the ranch in Gwinnett County too.
I want to find this ranch.
Maybe we could do an on-site podcast from this ranch in Gwinnett County.
Video the goat. He seems fine now.
Hopefully he's in rehab.
Well, he's been adopted now. The sheriff's office says the goat is healthy and has since been adopted.
He must not have an addictive personality. Speaking of addiction, State Representative Karen Mathiak has dropped a bill to require insurance companies to cover opioid addiction treatment on private health insurance plans and state-backed plans. And she's also required that massage therapy, acupuncture, and chiropractic care, all alternative medicines, are covered under the bill. And amazingly, I know you all are going to be just shocked to learn this, but amazingly, she's mandating chiropractic care, and she's a chiropractor.
No.
Yes, I know. I was shocked when I read it. I couldn't believe that a legislator would use their position in office to require another company to cover care for a service they provide. I was shocked. I read it several times, but it kept saying the same thing.
That is, wow. That was, look, forget everything about integrity in government and all of that for a moment. Just political inside baseball. If you're gonna do something like that, get a friend to do it.
Totally. Like,
you don't do it yourself. You get someone else to drop that. Hey, I found this study put out by the American Chiropractic Association that says chiropractic is great for addiction. Maybe we should mandate this, but we can't really mandate insurance because we're Republicans. But oh wait, it's okay now because that's not Obamacare.
Well, this isn't the first time they've done this. Last year, I think it was, they mandated hearing aids for children, and there was another instance of it, I think maybe the year before that. So the actual premise is not new. And, I want to be sympathetic to at least the idea, because I do understand the cost of opioid addiction and what it's costing our state and all this. Like, I at least understand the premise. I don't agree with it, but I understand where they're going for it. But to cover your own industry, there's no excuse for that. Someone should file an ethics complaint against her. Not to mention, she was just elected, like she was just sworn in last year, and she ran against the old guard, and she's already turned in year 2 to benefit herself.
I'm going to push my industry.
So that's all I have.
Well, like we covered it in episode 1. I'm an anarchist, so this kind of behavior doesn't shock me. It's government being government. So,
all right. So we need to take a quick pause. Thank some of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to be discussing the school shooting in Parkland, but we're gonna hit it from a different angle. This podcast is brought to you by All On Georgia. You can visit All On Georgia at www.allongeorgia.com. We've got a brand new website up, just launched this week, and it is beautiful. It is nice. So be sure to swing by allongeorgia.com and check it out. I think you'll be very, very pleased with what you see. We have all of the best in local, state, and national politics. Quite often, we are the only people streaming the city council meetings, the county commission meetings, the board of education meetings, local town halls, and other things of note. So be sure to stop on by and check out www.allongeorgia.com. In Parkland, Florida, last week was one of the largest and most tragic school shootings most tragic high school shootings in American history, and there's been a lot said. It was actually the event happened on the day that we recorded our last podcast, but we intentionally did not cover it because we didn't have all the facts. We didn't have all the info. We wanted all the dust to settle, find out what was going to come out. Quite a lot has happened both in Georgia and nationwide in the past week. Of note, President Trump has issued an order to essentially ban the bump stock. We'll probably get to that a little bit later on. And there's been several other things that have happened as well. Joining us tonight is Mike Briant of Skydas Group International. He is one of the premier security experts in the metro Atlanta area. So we are bringing him in to kind of clear out the politics, clear out all of the political buzz, and just really have a discussion on what options are available and what can be done with school shootings. So Mike, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks for having me. And I hope I live up to the billing there. So.
One of the more interesting things that has happened in Georgia actually occurred in Floyd County, and there's a lot to parse through here. On Tuesday, February the 20th at 7 a.m., the Floyd County Board of Education held a called meeting, and a lot of this was brought on by Floyd County Board of Education member Jay Shell, who suggested arming teachers as a possible way to increase safety in school. And there's a lot of very varied opinions on that, and I know that Mike, you're different than three of us, and that I know that you've actually fired live rounds at people who are in fact firing live rounds back at you. So what's your thoughts on the idea in general of arming teachers?
If you're going to carry a firearm, what people are doing here is conflating a thing, a tactile object, as somehow being the source of what your personal safety and what your personal security is. A handgun or a rifle or anything else, it's merely a tool to accomplish a task. I'm not necessarily opposed to some teachers carrying a firearm, but what I would be more of an advocate of is that they seek some type of proper training. I'd much rather train a teacher, have someone train a teacher, and then issue them a firearm down the road. It's taking a human life. That's not an easy thing to do. And I don't think that thought process is actually being looked at. And let's also, you've got to understand the nature of what type of shot that you're going to be making. If you give someone a handgun, we've all been to school, we've been to colleges, and if you look at the basic layout of any school, you have long hallways. And if you look at what a handgun is capable of and what Hollywood has given us the perception that they are capable of, that's generally two very different realities here. So if I were going to get involved with that, or a school board wants to get involved with that, you need to train somebody first before you hand them the handgun or whatever tool you're going to use to make yourself safe. I'm not, like I said, I'm not necessarily opposed to arming specific teachers, administration folks, but let's make sure that we get that training component in there with it. And I can tell you as a firearms instructor on the law enforcement side, when the first time I actually got in actual combat and what I was teaching and what I was participating in my law enforcement career, there were two very different things. And it's a very harsh reality. And I don't think that, with what I'm hearing is being discussed as a solution for arming teachers is actually the right solution for it, if that makes sense. You just can't simply give somebody a gun and say, presto changeo, you're now in charge of protecting our kids. That's not a viable solution.
Right, and that's kind of, and I'm right there. I'm certainly not opposed to the idea. It's just I don't want this to turn into a thing where you take someone who has never picked up a gun before and doesn't really have an interest in doing so, and they feel that that they're now prepared because they went to a weekend NRA class,
right?
And that's what do you guys think? Where are you at with this?
Well, in my mind, I think, at least the way that I envision something like that going down, would the school system would put out a notice to the various teachers that says, hey, this is an option now that we're exploring. And then they would take volunteers, because there's certainly, teachers are going to be like anybody else. There's those among us that are fine with firearms, and there's some that aren't. So they would take volunteers and then put them through a training, like probably a very specific type of training for an active shooter scenario. At least that's the way I would see it happening.
Right.
Well, and see, I kind of see it a little bit differently, because if you do something like that, unless you create an exemption under the law, like any training you give to these teachers and you keep maintaining like a database of who is armed, you're going to run into issues of open records and finding out who is the teacher that can, is eligible for this type of thing. And then you could ultimately like work your way around it and have the same result of what we just saw in Parkland. The way that I saw it was that like Georgia law gives school systems the ability to say, hey, we don't mind if you arm yourselves. It doesn't mean you have to, and it doesn't mean you have to tell us. It just means you can bring your gun in your purse and bring it into the classroom, and that's how I thought.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I look at, when I was a police officer way back in the day, I was in the apprehension business. Meaning someone had to do something criminal in nature, and then we basically went to go chase them down and then go apprehend them, after the fact. As a security consultant and what we do now, I'm in the prevention business. I'll be perfectly frank with you. I'm not interested in catching a bad guy. What I'm interested in doing is making them look at a potential target and say, hey, look, their practices, how they have set up their design processes and how the people perceive you and what their situational awareness is, it raises the bad guy's cost of business. And we can harp all day on the gun-free zones and why places are chosen, and that, I'll be honest with you, that is specifically one of the reasons why bad guys target schools. I know it's a soft target, but if you have the ability to work not only within your school systems and start some type of working team that encompasses everybody who's a member of that faculty, including your teachers, your janitorial staff, even the folks who work in the cafeteria. Each one of these people has some type of interaction with the students during the daytime. And what we're strong advocates of, and one of the things that we train our schools that we work with, is to build that team within your school. And if you go back and look at every single active shooter, they broadcast their intentions long before they ever take any type of action. And what's happening is the people who are within their sphere of influence simply don't step in, they don't act, they don't intervene. And right now the soup of the day is to go bash the FBI over the head and say, how come you didn't act on this kid when he was clearly displaying what his intentions were? That's not necessarily the responsibility of a federal government issue. His actions and activities were known within the local populace. He was broadcasting out on social media within his friends, his families, his the people that he associated with. He was saying precisely what he was going to do. And rather than someone within that sphere of influence, those people who had direct contact with him, those fellow students, those friends, or whomever, we've outsourced that responsibility to some third party, some outside entity. And to be frank, that's a failure that we have. And that's honestly, if you want to stop these things, you've got to intervene long before they reach a crisis point.
In Floyd County, going back to this Board of Education meeting, at present, there are 4 school resource officers assigned to protect 10,000 students across 19 different campuses. And that's up in Floyd County. That's in Georgia, in the rural area.
That is an unrealistic approach. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know whether that is a financial resource failure, or whether it's a lack of understanding on what is the capability of an individual officer. That's kind of operating on the odds method of personal safety and security. They're basically betting that the odds are that something bad is not going to happen. Right. That's not a realistic approach, especially with our kids today.
And I know that is a financial issue in a lot of places. Jessica, what were you telling me that was the status down there in Bullock County right now with the?
In Bullock, we have, several schools, but I think our city police, the Statesboro police, are able to cover the high school and the city limits, and then the Bullock County Sheriff's Office is able to allocate, I think, 2 deputies to another high school and to a middle school. And the rest of our middle schools are uncovered, and so are the middle schools. And Bullock is a pretty wealthy county compared to some of the rural counties around us. And I was telling Jonathan and Matt before you came on that most of them have, if anyone at all, they have a part-time officer who, will stop by and patrol at the high school, just to make a presence known. And then, or some of them have an actual deputy assigned, but they just don't have the money. They don't have the workforce to allocate somebody to the school to be there all day long.
And that's a realistic problem. Most of our local and state institutions are they're taxed, and that's that they're overstretched and they don't have the budgets to cover this. And the second thing that that is a concern that I've got here is, just because you have an officer present there, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have an effective security or safety program. That's kind of a failure of our modern law enforcement curriculum. What's happening is, and this is just an observation that I've seen here, is that society believes that because a police officer is present, that security and safety is also present, and that's just simply not true. When I went through the academy, I spent a week on law, then I spent another week on criminal procedure, and the rest of it was basically trying to do the job, the mechanics of arrest, firearms training, learning to drive a car, responding to domestic disputes. At no point in any of our police academies are we teaching police officers a layered approach and how to address the physical security of the installations, which we have tasked them to provide security for. You know, social media, that's public information. The moment you post something on social media, it goes out in the public domain. And I'm a strong advocate that schools begin to monitor this closely. And I know that, you know, for folks out there concerned about our personal liberties, I do understand. But the key word here is it's social media. It's not private media. It's something that people are sharing in a public domain.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I mean, you're choosing to put this on the internet.
I agree to an extent, though, because we don't want. I mean, this has actually been an interesting thing when you get into bullying, which kind of coincides here. But you know, there's been a problem with schools trying to figure out, you know, when do we police? When is stuff that's happening outside of school relevant to what's happening in school? And obviously, a direct threat or anything closely resembling a threat is. But I mean, you have to be careful about policing what's happening off campus. You've got to draw a line. If that's going to be the policy, then it needs to be, you know, specifically about threats, because we don't want our administrators spending all the time just policing the internet just to do it, you know?
No, I agree with that. But I think that the point is, you know, I have a high school age daughter and I have another daughter who's in college. Within their peer group, you know, they have their Snapchats, their Instagrams, and all the other communication devices that they have there. They know when something's not right. They know when someone's making some type of ridiculous threats, and those type of comments tend to spread like wildfire.
Absolutely.
When you see those types of comments, and I'm not saying that, you know, that we hire someone at a school to sit and monitor all the specific traffic, but when you have something that comes up or someone's making some type of threat, we pay attention to that. We research it and do whatever it takes to either intercede on that person, because that person may be in some type of crisis. They may be, you know, they may need some type of help. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we try and throw them in jail. Just say, hey, look, you know, especially for a young person, if they've got problems at home somewhere, a cry for help takes many different manifestations. And that's something, you know, I think schools are uniquely qualified to address based upon the interactions that they have. But to say that, you know, we don't pay attention and we don't monitor social media, that's just simply not, you know, we have to be aware that this is where these kids are communicating with, and this is the tool that they're using. This is the early warning system that is readily at our fingers, and to not use it, to be perfectly honest, I think it's a travesty.
Well, hey, we do appreciate you being on with us tonight. So we'll.
Sure, man.
All right. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Mike. If you would like to speak with Mike Briant, you can contact him at www.skydasgroup.com. So if you'd like to contact him, that's where you can do so at. This podcast is brought to you by All On Georgia. You can visit All On Georgia at www.allongeorgia.com. We've got a brand new website up, just launched this week, and it is beautiful. It is nice. So be sure to swing by allongeorgia.com and check it out. I think you'll be very, very pleased with what you see. We have all of the best in local, state, and national politics. Quite often, we are the only people streaming the city council meetings, the county commission meetings, the board of education meetings, local town halls, and other things of note. So be sure to stop on by and check out www.allongeorgia.com. Park update this week.
We do. So I think the last time we were here talking about all of this, I had been to court in Oak Park and still trying to get my open records request, and still not having much luck on the open records request front. The clerk there is still stonewalling me, and I'm by no means an expert, but I've filed probably 100 open records requests since All On Georgia started a few years ago, and I know what can be released and what can't be released, and so we're currently in an email war back and forth about what can and cannot be redacted. And she actually said to me today that even though it doesn't apply, I'm asking to see traffic citations. She said that even though it doesn't apply, she's going to use the motor vehicle accident report code language to keep me from seeing stuff, and which is totally illegal. But she wants to charge me $1,100, and she says it's going to take her 55 hours to do the work. And I mean, again, we're talking about a town of 450 people. But what's so frustrating is that this truly is a cookie cutter thing. You could pick this up and move it to any town or city or county in rural Georgia, and you see the same thing. You see ignorance, you see deliberate denial of records, and it's just the same thing over and over. So my next course of action is to file a complaint with the Attorney General's office, and if and when that gets me nowhere, then you file an order in Superior Court in the county, which would be Emmanuel County. But the whole point of the high cost is that they want to stop people from getting the information. And I didn't just ask for traffic citations. I asked for budget documents and audits and things like that, which they don't have. And she actually asked me what an actual budget was today in the email. She asked, what is an actual budget? So it's going to get interesting. It's going to get pretty legal oriented, but I'm hoping that, you know, at the end of the day, I can just get the information so that I can write the story and help the people in the community that contacted All in Georgia in the first place with help with getting this information. So that's the Oak Park Adventure update.
Well, all right, and I have my own adventure update. I'm not going to go too deep into it. I'm not even going to give you a city, but I too have been contacted by some upset residents in a neighboring county who are calling me they want me to come cover their city because there's apparently quite a lot of very interesting things going on out at the city meetings. So hopefully I'll have something, both look for those things both on All on Georgia as well as here on the podcast. What about you, Matt? Are you doing anything interesting, or are you just hanging out in Gatlinburg?
Well, right now I'm hanging out in Gatlinburg, but I really think that that I'm gonna pick a fight with the Palm County Board of Education.
Well, all right.
Tell us more, Mr. Rogers.
Right? No, I'm gonna leave it at that. No, there was a conversation going on one of the local government pages that had to do with school shootings, and the question of arming teachers came up, and I specifically asked one of the Board of Education members, I believe he's an at-large member, if they were going to talk about it, and it was a yes or no question, and I got this long drawn out, political non-speak answer, and now I'm being called a bully, but so I think I'm probably going to go pick a fight over that.
What do you want to see happen?
Well, I don't know. I think kind of like our conversation with Mike a little bit ago. It should be on the table for discussion. But I don't know, man. I just hate when I ask someone a very simple question and I get a BS answer. Yes or no?
Welcome to politics.
Right?
Yeah. So next week we have a very exciting episode. Along with those interesting things, we're going to be talking about the reefer.
What about it?
Well, specifically, we're going to be discussing medical cannabis in Georgia. There is I'm not even going to go into them right now, into all of them, but, if you actually look at medical cannabis in Georgia, there is a laundry list of bills moving through both chambers right now. It is no longer just Representative Peake putting out his bill and fighting to get it passed, and Kurt Thompson over on the Senate side putting out his bill and Casey Cagle snuffing it out because he's a Democrat. we are now dealing with just a massive array of bills covering everything from in-state growth to constitutional amendments to a PTSD additional diagnosis, just a massive amount of bills. So I think what we're going to do next week is we're going to hammer down all those bills, find out what they do, find out how they do it. Hopefully, Representative Peake will be here with us to kind of give us his perspective as Georgia's longest running legal cannabis legislator.
We'll also be talking about the Georgia gubernatorial candidates on both sides of the aisle. There's no Libertarian candidate right now, but we'll be talking about where they stand on the cannabis legislation, where we've come from, where we're going, and where they are on in-state cultivation.
Well, and that will certainly be an interesting conversation. I know to give just a little bit away that I saw where Representative Peake had endorsed Clay Tippins. So that's out there. So
It's a bold move.
next week we'll be talking cannabis, and we talking cannabis. Matt's fight with the Board of Education, Jessica's big adventure in Oak Park, and hopefully I'll have enough to where I can tell you where I've been playing. So we appreciate you coming with us, enjoying this podcast. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Later.